Good evening, and welcome to the Secrets of Cooking for Television. I'm Gail Simmons from Bravo's Top Chef, come to you from my daughter's bedroom, as we do. On behalf of the Television Academy, thank you to the Activities Committee, the Reality Programming Peer Group, and the Television Academy staff for making this event possible. I'm looking so forward to a great evening talking with some of the most successful and popular chefs working in television today. We will explore how television created a culture for the food obsessed, how their television shows span the gamut from tasting delicacies around the world to fierce culinary competition and the exploration of diverse cuisine right here in America. In any way and every way that these chefs have connected with you, you have welcomed them into your homes and to your tables. And we're here today to explore some of the most memorable moments that they've made on television, as well as the evolution of the genre over many, many years. Let's take a look.
When you flip anything, you just have to have the courage of your convictions, particularly if it's sort of a loose mass like this. Well, that didn't go very well.
Should have the emergency number written on it somewhere.
Bam! That's a little bit right there.
I'm going to show you how to make pork chops that will blow your mind.
Do you want some more sauce on top?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, beat it up, Martha.
Okay, I'll beat it up.
A little bit of coconut water, fresh grated coconut.
Coconut water?
Yeah. A little bit more.
Hey guys, I'm Jet Tila, and this is Ready Jet Cook.
Ooh. Something delicious in a bowl? Check.
This is what American food looks like.
Can you help me? Let's go.
A little camel sausage. Wow.
Our secret ingredient. Melon!
He's going to be able to take purees and sauces and completely freeze them very quickly.
The cake is too warm.
It eats really well. It's easy, it's tender, it sort of melts in your mouth.
It felt like a very confident plate of food, and yet you're falling apart up here.
Please pack your knives and go.
Joining us tonight, please welcome Antonia LaFaso. She's a world-renowned chef, former Top Chef contestant on Food Network's Restaurant Hustle, and executive chef of Black Market Liquor Bar, Scopa Italian Roots, and Dama Restaurant in Los Angeles. With us also is Curtis Stone, host of Field Trip with Curtis Stone, former host of Top Chef Masters and head judge on Top Chef Junior, and of course, chef and owner of Gwen Butcher Shop and Restaurant and Mod, also in LA. And last but certainly not least, Jet Tila, elite chef, Food Network, Tournament of Champions star, and chef partner in Payway Restaurant Group. Thank you guys so much for being with me. It's a thrill to see you all sort of in person. Let's take a look at some of their best TV moments.
Oh, Lord.
Oh no.
Cut them down the middle.
Yeah, so I reckon we just...
Said come down, let's catch some lobsters, we'll cook them up on the rocks. I literally thought maybe a pot of seawater, we'll boil them and we'll sit here and eat them with a bit of lemon. That's as sophisticated I thought it would be. You've done a Sri Lankan curry, you're making roti on the cast iron pan. Mate, it smells and looks unbelievable.
Lock that up and it's game on.
Oh mate. Oh my God.
I'm Chef Antonia LaFasto. I'm an executive chef and restaurant owner here in Los Angeles, California. I have 3 restaurants: Scopa Italian Roots, which is my American Italian restaurant; Dama, which is my Latin-inspired restaurant; and Black Market, which is, I like to say, American eclectic. I am a single mom of an incredible 20-year-old college student named Zaya. I started cooking when I was 10 years old in Long Island, New York. I grew up in an Italian and Jewish family, so food was a huge part of how we showed love and appreciation. I decided to go to culinary school because I knew that I loved food, I knew that I loved the restaurant industry, and I knew that I wanted to be a part of it. The biggest passion for me in this industry is hospitality, taking care of people. I love that I am the facilitator of the good time.
I need to make a spice mix for the beef and get that marinating.
My plan is to make a drunken Szechuan style beef over very fluffy and beautiful bell pepper fried rice.
I'll let that dry out now.
We're good. This is a classic Asian comfort food dish. I made my own 5-spice blend. I've got Szechuan peppercorn, cinnamon, star anise, and salt and sugar. I'm taking the spices, grinding it in the spice blender, checked off the spice grinder requirement. Beef chuck. It's very flavorful, but it's extremely tough.
What are you cutting down here? What are you cutting off the back?
I'm finding a piece of protein that has the least amount of connective tissue.
Got it.
I'm gonna cherry pick to find pieces that are not super tough. They're not even gonna know it's chuck.
My marinade for chuck is baking soda for tenderness, cornstarch for that kind of slipperiness that we love about Chinese food, and then my spice blend.
Why the baking soda, chef?
It gets into the protein strands like your finger and pushes them apart. It's gonna tenderize.
And the booze element on that is going to be...
Drunken, man, I gotta take that seriously.
Yeah,
that's where I'm most scared, to be honest with you, Simon. Because I don't drink.
But hey, if you need a taster...
Yeah, exactly.
But I know in this game, when they say boozy, they're gonna want it really boozy.
Another tenderizer technique is marinate and deep fry the meat. And then you take it to the stir fry. This will flash evaporate all the liquid. The baking soda does all the pushing apart of the protein strands.
I love getting the awkwardness of you watching yourselves on television. It's very telling.
Oh, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Every viewer is an eater. And so in ways, every viewer is a judge. Whether it's home cooking, fine dining, or even just using your microwave, almost anyone who's watched television and watched food television has been influenced by television chefs since the genre began, starting all the way back with Julia Child and Jacques Pepin. And as time went on, the genre certainly broadened and now combines culinary vision with the thrill of competition. And it has allowed home cooks and chefs around the world at every level to participate and to build a platform. It continues to evolve as we travel and explore food and culture in every corner of this earth. All of you have had incredibly successful careers as chefs and as television personalities, as well as restaurateurs. So I want to start from the beginning of your television career specifically. And I'd love to hear from all of you a little bit about the first time, sort of where, when, and why you decided to take your food onto television. Let's start with you, Jet. Your background is, incredibly interesting because you always worked a little bit in the food industry. Your parents ran Thai grocery stores and restaurants, but you changed direction at some point from doing what they did to going to the Cordon Bleu. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey? And then when it became clear that going on to television was going to be a good thing, not just cooking?
Yeah, so awesome to be here, by the way. I always wanted to say thank you to the Academy. I'm just going to leave that one there. I don't think I'll ever be able to say that one again. So I was really lucky to grow up in around kind of the birth of Thai food in America. My family immigrated here in the 60s. They started the first Thai market, the first Thai restaurants. I saw the entire Thai food community I grew up actually in the epicenter of it. So being a grocery store kid and a restaurant kid and working on the farms, growing produce, et cetera, I had a very narrow but deep vision of food. In my teens and early 20s, there was this big, tall Australian guy who wanted to shoot a TV show in our grocery store. And one of the first times I was ever on television was actually Take Home Chef with Curtis Stone. That really, to me, was the
No.
genesis. I know. I was saving this.
The
this
best
is not
story.
in the notes. Yeah,
That's
I don't know if
incredible.
Curtis even remembers. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Of course.
So, did you remember that, Curtis, at all?
Are you kidding me? It was my favorite episode. It was so much
Well,
fun.
yeah. You say that to all the chefs. So, and that was way before culinary school. So that really was the genesis of seeing Curtis, and in '99 when Food Network started, seeing Ming Tsai, and previous to that, obviously with Martin Yan. I really understood that one of my favorite things to do in life is teach. Like, that is really a true passion of mine. And there was no better medium to teach people cooking than television. So through all of these, amazing chefs that I've mentioned before, including the one on this panel, it really sparked the interest to jump further into the medium. There's the shortest story.
I love that. That is beautiful. I mean, truly, that was unexpected, at least by me, and that's an amazing thing. Okay, well then, Curtis, on a related note, you grew up in Australia, clearly, and I'd love to know, the short of how you came to America, because you were cooking for a long time, and there was a lot that happened in between you growing up in Australia, obviously, and then becoming the take-home chef, and then you're becoming a restaurateur here in the States afterwards. So how did the television part play into you as a cook?
Well, firstly, thank you, Jet. You just made me feel 100 years old, but it was, it really genuinely was my favorite episode of Take Home Chef. And, look, for me, I left Australia, I did my apprenticeship in Australia, and then I moved to Europe. I went and worked for Marco Pierre White, and I always wanted to work for Marco. His was the first book that really just took me to somewhere else. I can remember reading Marco's book, White Heat, and Marco was the youngest chef in the world to win 3 Michelin stars, and very talented, and also absolutely bonkers, crazy, but the intensity in his kitchen, you could feel it when you read his book. And I was like, I'm going to go to London and work for this guy. So I did, and I spent 7 or 8 years in London working for Marco. And at some point I became one of the head chefs in his company, and I was running one of his restaurants. And the TV landscape, going back to how old I am, it sort of hadn't really kicked off. There was Jamie Oliver, and we all sort of knew of Jamie, but he was this anomaly who, I'm not exactly sure when the Food Network started in the States, but living in London, there weren't really a lot of TV chefs. There was a couple, and I wasn't interested in it at all. But I was included in a book while working for Marco called London on a Plate. And I was asked to, feature some recipes in this book, and it was a bunch of chefs. And when the book came out, it was the first thing I'd done at all in the media. They asked the chefs that were involved in it to go and do some publicity for the book. So I went and did a thing on the BBC Saturday morning TV, and it was literally just cooking a dish. And I can remember being so terrified. I didn't look up once. I just put my head down. I spoke to my food the entire time I cooked. And I walked off thinking that was the worst experience. I'm never doing it again. And 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from one of the producers there asking if I'd like to do a show called Surfing the Menu, which was a travel cooking show back in Australia, traveling around Australia, learning about, Aussie ingredients. And the idea of being paid to surf and cook was very attractive to me. So I decided that I'd give it a shot, and I did, and it's snowballed from there. A happy mistake.
Amazing. Beautiful. Yeah. The idea of surfing and cooking sounds pretty good, even now. And Antonia, you were trained and came up as a cook in some of the most well-known kitchens in Los Angeles, specifically Spago, Wolfgang Puck's flagship. And you had a very different experience also being a woman coming up through the ranks of an incredibly high pressure kitchen at a time when I have to imagine, because I was cooking even before you were, because I'm also old, the atmosphere and what that felt like. And for you, I'd love to hear not just your journey of sticking with it and holding your ground as a woman in that type of kitchen, but also the challenges and triumphs of what led you to then decide to be on television because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I always like to say there's, chefs that have these epiphanies of when they wanted to become a chef. And, a lot, it's like I was drinking wine by the Seine River, eating a baguette. And that's that's when I realized that this is the industry I wanted to be in. My love of food came from being in a very like small area in Long Island, New York, where just like Italian American food was at the forefront of everything that I ate. And then moving to Los Angeles with my parents when I was 11 and eating in an El Torito and having fajitas for the first time. And my mind was blown at this idea of all these different kinds of food and cuisine. And there was kind of no looking back. I just always wanted to be in the hospitality industry. So when I got a job when I was 15 years old, it was hot dog on a stick at the Sherman Oaks Galleria, and I was making corn dogs. And, then I was, working at Chin Chin in the San Fernando Valley. And I just always gravitated towards the restaurant industry, whether I was a host, a server, and then I made my way into the kitchen a little bit later. And it was just the most incredible experience, and it was even, I had Zaya and then went to culinary school. So that picture that you just saw in the opening was me at 23 years old, graduating culinary school with, a 7-month-old on my hip and just being like, I have no idea what this is going to look like, but, I love it. And I can't see myself doing anything else. I had the unique pleasure and opportunity to work in one of the greatest kitchens in Los Angeles at the time. There was only one other female at the time that worked in the savory department, because obviously most chefs at that time for women were all pastry chefs. So it was myself and a young girl named Meta. We ironically looked identical. So I was actually not Antonia. I was just Meta Daytime. So I was like, that was my name. It was a running joke. It wasn't that awful. Yeah. But it was,
okay.
It was, yeah, no, it was, I have to say, there has been, obviously a lot of women have had, not the greatest experiences in their kitchen. That kitchen to me was the best learning experience I've ever had. I had the incredible opportunity to work with Lee Hefter and Ari Rosenson, who were some of the most incredible mentors on the planet. Still to this day, Lee actually just retired, and I got a text message from him and we were both in tears, and he was like, I'm so incredibly proud of you. And I'm in tears. And it's this experience of mentorship and of learning this craft in this, this time where you're just like, I couldn't have even imagined being in another kitchen, to be honest. Because he was honestly probably one of the most incredible mentors I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. And again, 25 years later, he's, on my WhatsApp crying, telling me that he's so proud to have me part of his history. I'm like, I'm so proud to have you part of my history. And the television thing really came, and at the time, if you were a serious cook and working in that kind of a restaurant, you didn't go on television. You were almost like blacklisted if you did go on television. It's like real chefs don't do that show, because I did Top Chef, where I met you, Gail. I was Top Chef season 4. It's like Top Chef season like 97.
Yes.
So, I was like OG season
Almost.
4.
Pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close. And so, I went in there without any idea of what that looked like. Just the fact that I wanted to say yes to things that scared me and kind of press the envelope a little bit and see where that took me, you know what I mean? But at the time, it was pretty like if you worked in those kinds of restaurants, you didn't do television. It was this separation of like, you're either a serious chef or you're a television chef. But I loved the experience. I at that point, I was like, any person who doesn't think that their skills and knowledge of food aren't tested in that type of competition, you've got another thing coming. Jump in the water's fine. In television, you'll enjoy it, and press yourself in a way that you've never been pressed before.
You bring up an interesting point, which is actually exactly what I wanted to explore with the three of you specifically. And that's that, Jed and Antonia certainly have now, you've both been contestants and judges, and Curtis, you've worked on every side, every angle, host, judge, you've been cooking, you've been deep sea diving with a pan in your hand. and the idea, I think, of how far the genre, specifically of competition show, has come when we talk about developing talent. And that, I think, is something certainly that has been remarkable for me to see and be part of. And probably the most compelling reason that I have stayed working, specifically with Top Chef, but in the genre of competitive reality, because of just that. You mentioned that at the beginning, in the early days, being on television and being a fine dining chef were at opposite ends of the spectrum, and you were always worried about not being taken seriously. But now, I think we can all say with pride just how much talent has come out of these competition shows that has really changed the landscape of restaurants in America. And the reason people go to them, recognize them, follow them. So, Antonia, to that point, what has compelled you to be on both sides, and which do you prefer? And what has been your biggest sort of lesson from the competition?
Well, Jet said it so perfectly earlier. There's this ability to teach on a larger scale. So as chefs, our first instinct is to teach. I mean, literally, that's what we do. We pass down all the information that we've collected over a lifetime worth of work, and we give that to another generation, and whoever really wants to put in the time and the effort and learn. Being able to do that on television gives you the unique opportunity to do it on a much larger scale. So I say that, us as judges, us as competitors, we actually have an even bigger responsibility as, I'm going to say experts, to really teach in a way so that the rest of the country and the rest of the world can see this on such a huge scale. And that's my favorite part of it. You know what I mean? So instead of just sort of touching the small amount of people that work with me in all of the restaurants, and the opportunities that I have to go in and work with students and do different events and, touch interns, et cetera. This is, this magnified by 100%. So for me, that's the biggest part of it. Do I like competing versus judging? I haven't really gotten there yet. I love judging, obviously, because the pressure of competing, sort of puts me into a tailspin. Jet will tell you, when I compete, you've seen me also, Curtis, you've seen me, Gail, I become a psychotic person. So I don't necessarily love that feeling where, I want to throw up in the shower and then eat 17 glazed donuts and then go and compete. And that's my process. So I do like judging, but at the same time, I also think that there's a part to competing that keeps you so fresh. And it's this weird superpower that we have. Like, Jet and I are on Tournament of Champions right now. And it's like, this weird wheel spins and 5 words pop up. And in those 5 words, he sees them totally different than the way that I see them. And then you have, 2 totally different dishes. Curtis will tell you he's judged the show. That there's this weird superpower that we have. And it's really, I find incredibly exciting at the end of it when you look down and 35 minutes has passed and you see what you've created and you have no idea how that just came out of your mind and then through your hands through operational. And it's very rewarding. That part of it's very, very rewarding, even when you fail. Mm-hmm. Because when you fail, you look back and you say, what could I have done differently? What was my mindset? Why was I thinking this way? And you fine tune it. So there's always a lesson, whether you're successful at it or whether you fail at
it. I love that. It's true. Curtis, from a judging standpoint, having judged so many chefs at so many different levels, including minors on Top Chef Junior, for example, but also masters, who are at the top of their game, the best chefs in this country. What is most compelling about the genre for you? Like what keeps you coming back to see what they do again and again? Or what have you learned, I guess, from playing that role as a judge?
It's such an exciting, who would have thought you could turn cooking into a sport? But it's exactly what's happened, right? It became very competitive. And I think the reason it works so well is every single night in our restaurants, we have to compete, whether we're competing with ourselves, whether we're competing with the people on the line, but we're competing as a team to try and win the service. And what you do when you go into a service is you have 100 people. They all want to come for dinner. They all want to eat at the same time. And somehow we have to turn that on and create hundreds and hundreds of plates of food in a very short window. So it's already very competitive. So watching different chefs have different attitudes. Some people are very calm. Some people get crazy. Like Antonia said, you know, her process is eating a lot of glazed donuts. But all of that really adds up to a very exciting moment when you're watching these chefs go at it, you know, and go at it. It's a very personal thing. But then I'm always just amazed by what they can produce under the pressure and the stress and a short amount of time. And I think there's something very challenging for me to be a judge, because I never want to judge my peers, if you know what I mean. You always want to be very complimentary of your peers, but it is what it is. You know, the show must go on, as they say in Hollywood, and there's something really fun about getting feedback. And I've been on both sides of it too. And it's not easy to stand there, but it's also very enlightening when someone is telling you about your food and you're like, okay, that was your experience. I would have thought it ate more like this or like that. And so I find it very exciting. I really do enjoy being involved in those shows no matter what. I'm the guy that they say, oh, you can go to your trailer. And then I sneak around the back and I watch from the other side on a monitor that the producers don't even know I'm standing in there, because I want to know exactly how it's all playing out and see the mindset of each chef and how they're approaching a different challenge.
Interesting. And Jet, just to circle back to what Tony was talking about a minute ago, Tournament of Champions. You have just shot it. And I know in the final round of this season of Tournament of Champions on Food Network, you and Antonia were in the first ever tie in a quarterfinal round. In fact, you were competing against each other. What was that like?
Wow. So if Antonia is the warrior princess and she has to get like, she's super hyped and she throws up and eats donuts, I'm kind of the other guy. I'm kind of like the Zen, you know, very Zen about it. I think one thing that, you know, we have to mention is cooking is hard. Being on television is hard. And they're two very different skills. And what I have learned over this decade, more than a decade now, is working all these new muscles of television. Like Curtis said, if you're sitting there and talking to your food, who wants to watch you? You might have all this dynamic, you know, information and processes, but you're not conveying anything. So for me, you know, the last 10 years has been, you know, learning how to, you know, demonstrate and be dynamic and actually cook is exciting. You know, I need to be kind of narrating and going through. So what is it like cooking against Antonia? It's scary, right? Because I was always a chef when I was a cook and I was a chef. I had one of those kind of temple kitchens. Everyone was really quiet. Everyone, you know, had their job and they executed very well. And that is horrible to watch on television. So I had to actually teach myself to be loud and raucous. And one thing though, like I think Antonia says, like, this is, it does feel like a superpower. Like I've always been sedate and kind of like, oh, if I win, I win. If I don't win, whatever. But this is real. And you know, and if I keep losing, people are gonna be like, yo, that dude sucks. So I'm like, all right, I better start bringing some, you know, of the old me in to this. And so I think what you see on Tournament of Champions through the 2 seasons is I actually wake up, figure it out, and start to cook as well as I did in real life on television. So for me, it's an amazing journey to cook with one of my best friends against one of my best friends, but she always brings out the best in me because we've known each other for so long. And that's what it's like. It is a thrill. It is an honor. It's amazing that we get to do this for a living, and you know, I hope it never ends. So that's how it all feels for me.
Well said.
I love that. Yeah, I feel the same. Okay, in terms of genres of food television, the other genre, and we're gonna touch back on competition in a minute again, but food travel shows have been a mainstay in popularity for years. And we, during the last year, have actually had a resurgence of great travel from the comforts of our couch, right? Of our couch and our television. Curtis, you have a new show, Field Trip, that took you around the world And it's a relatively known format of traveling to learn about other cultures. But what inspired you to make Field Trip, and what sets it apart, differentiates it from other travel food genre shows out there?
Well, there's a few things that set it apart, I guess. First of all, we changed the concept of Maud, my little restaurant in Beverly Hills. It's only got 24 seats. And when we first started, we did one ingredient per month. And we take that one ingredient, we create a 10-course menu out of it to try and, I guess, do a deep dive on the ingredient. If you can only cook with that one ingredient and make it interesting 10 courses into the menu, you've got to really think about all the different things you can do with it. And the restaurant was very successful, and we, absolutely loved our jobs. And as chefs, it just kept us on that creative treadmill of every month a new 10-course menu. It was super challenging. But at some point, we got maybe 4 years into it, and we're like, we're out of ingredients. We've done 50 different ingredients, and we're sitting there thinking, can we do a sweet potato menu? And we sort of, it started to feel a little tired. And I said, let's change the format. So we did. We changed it to a wine region being that central link to the menu. So then, of course, the team and I sat around and we're like, imagine if we could go and visit some of these wine regions, get inspired by it, and then come back and try and figure out a menu. So we started, and we changed. We couldn't afford to go to a different region every month. So we did 4 menus a year. The very first one we did in Burgundy, and we stay in the cheapest hotels, and we literally call chefs and winemakers and food producers before we go. And then we land and go on this like crazy 2 or 3 day adventure to try and grasp as much as we can, and also buy some incredible wine, and then come back and create the menu. I was talking to a cinematographer buddy of mine who's, probably way too fancy to be working on a show like that. And he's like, dude, that's a TV show. Why aren't you filming? It's like this beautiful idea for a documentary. And I was like, oh God, I don't think anyone would buy that kind of show right now. We're so busy when we get there. And he's like, that's brilliant. That's exactly what you should be doing. So we decided to make it. We make it ourselves. The first one we shot, we took 3 people with us, and we went to Rioja, and it was literally just a fly on the wall sort of style show. They followed us around on our adventure. And we pitched it to PBS, where you still get, great creative control over stuff. And that's what we did. So we're in our 3rd season, and it's me and another chef, or me and a sommelier, or 3 of us traveling to these gorgeous parts of the world and trying to be inspired, not just by the food and the wine of the region, but digging deeper. And that's exactly what chefs do. We want to learn about the people and the style of music they listen to, and what's the culture, what's the real deal of that place. And I think what it's turned into is the kind of show we wish that's what it was like when we traveled all the time, where you're meeting locals and you're in their homes and you're on their farms, and you're really getting a sense of the fact that we get to drink some beautiful wine on the road isn't the worst thing in the world either. So it's been a bit of a dream, because it marries my restaurant life with my TV world, and we get full creative control. And like I say, there's not many genres these days that you can really tell beautiful stories without having to work in all sorts of stuff, whether it's sponsorship or whatever. And this is just sort of that organic, natural way of making TV, I guess.
Well, and what's incredible, actually, as you're explaining it, that I can't think at the moment exactly of another show out there like it, is that there is a real-time end result for your customers to watching this show, right? You go to Rioja, they get to see it, and then months later, pandemic aside, they can reap the fruits of your labor literally by going and having your Rioja menu, right?
Exactly.
Ad mod, for example, that is still the relationship.
That's right. And we wanted to sort of,
okay,
we wanted to open it up and make it like great restaurants feel a little bit more inclusive, I think. And what we did is said, if you have wine from the region, if you're a collector of old Riojas or Burgundies or wines from South Australia, when we do that region, bring them in. So we don't charge corkage, and we let people bring their own wine. And it's turned into this really incredible atmosphere where you can't believe what people have in their cellars, and they bring these wines in and they share them with the team and with other people in the restaurant. And it's a really beautiful experience.
So it really kind of passes on the learning far beyond the 46 minutes or 22 minutes of the show. That's amazing. So speaking of your restaurants and the relationship between shows and restaurants, I'd love to hear from each of you about what you didn't expect as an end result to being on television in terms of how it's translated to your businesses, specifically to your restaurant businesses, and how that intersection has played out. What's been the benefit or maybe some surprising things about the fact that, unlike so many things we see on television, you all have completely other jobs in addition to being on television. So how does that business relationship work for you and translate to what we say in the restaurant industry as butts in seats? Jet, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur way longer than I've been on television. So it's been such an interesting journey, good and bad. I think the good, I think it goes without saying, and my goal was never to be on TV to understand the marketing power of it, but it is the ultimate, marketing tool. So in terms of butts and seats, the reality is, we have 130 locations of pay away, and we're building a bunch of these Dragon Tiger noodles. The positive is, anywhere in America someone can come and eat my food, right? And I think it's exciting, and it creates this kind of energy and a deeper connection, right? Because now I think they have this kind of television connection, which is great, and now they have this more. You get deeper into the senses. Now there's tastes and smells, and beyond that, the negative is I think there are people that expect us to be in every location every single day, and everyone here actually has multiple locations, and I think that, and then which brings up the issue of keeping quality control. And when you have multiple locations, you're not always going to have a great day. And with the internet nowadays, everyone has the ability to be an instant restaurant critic, or with the internet, with social media, they literally they will message me and go, dude, that noodle dish yesterday at this location somewhere was not on point. I'm like, okay, bro, like, have some reasonable expectations. So it is really nice to be able to, again, reach out deeper and in a sense to connect with people, and that's really nice. And there's no doubt that television affects butts and seats. So it's kind of a fun deal. That's my short piece of that.
Yeah. Antonia, you came to television at a very different point in your career. Obviously, you were a young chef at that moment of the precipice of about to become television's Antonia Lofaso. What was the experience translating your television life to opening restaurants and becoming a restaurateur, and how does that intersect?
Well, I mean, the hard part about it is that when I did Top Chef, I was so young, and I actually hadn't even opened my first restaurant yet. And it actually, for me, I hadn't found my voice yet. I didn't really understand what I wanted to be in sort of the restaurant industry. It was my first time becoming an executive chef. The company that I was working for at the time was so excited that I had done so well on season 4. And I was a petrified child because I really hadn't developed my sense of opinion yet, to be honest. And it wasn't for a little bit that actually happened. So my first experience of opening a restaurant with kind of all of that notoriety from television was actually really overwhelming, and not in a positive way for me. I took a step back and kind of like picked up, put my big girl panties on, and was just like, let's figure this out and let's start over. And I did about 5 years later. And the now restaurant group that I'm with, that I've helped develop with my 2 business partners, is a direct reflection of the food that I feel comfortable talking about day in and day out. They represent who I am. They represent the way that I want to eat. I feel more confident saying that this is what I love to do. This is what I want to be. This is what it should look like. I am the loudest voice at the table. Because at the end of the day, you know, when a restaurant doesn't do well, they're not like, you know what, whoever designed this really messed this up. It's the chef gets all the glory and they get all the pain at the same exact time. So really understanding that. I actually don't put my name on any of my menus in my restaurants because LA is hard. And I feel like if sometimes, you know, there's this like, don't you want to come to this restaurant with this chef who's on television? My restaurants are my real job. My television career is like me moonlighting. And so I take what I do in the restaurants very, very seriously. And there's people, I love it when people come in and they have no idea. They've been coming to the restaurant for a year and all of a sudden they see me walk through the dining room. They're like, I had no idea this was your place. That makes me feel like $1 million because they're genuinely there for the food. They could care less that I'm on television. That being said, too, my business partners always like to make a joke. They're like, nobody even cares that you're on television. And then I have like 7-year-olds that run up and like grab onto my leg and they're like, you're the best thing ever in the entire world. So like, I got a lot of like 7-year-olds that like think I'm really cool. You know, I always like to say, if you're on television and people come into the restaurant because you're on television, you get them in there once. They're not coming back to spend any more of their hard-earned dollars to come back again and again with the chance or the, you know, the opportunity to get a glimpse of, you know, my bun rushing through the dining room. Like it has to be about the food. It has to be about the service. It has to be about the concept. It has to be about the experience because people will come once. They will not come back again. And so in order for me to be really true to like what it is that I love and what I do, the restaurant has to come first. The people that my teams that I build and teams of people that help me build teams, they have to come first. And that's really like the only way that it works.
Mm-hmm. Curtis, you, at least in this country, sort of did the reverse in a way. You were known to American audiences on television first as an expert, and then you opened your restaurants. You know, you were established as an expert. We all knew that you were a chef for years, but you then opened your restaurants several years later after having been on television in that role for a long time. So what was that moment that made you decide that you wanted to plant more, you know, brick and mortar restaurants after having had such a long television career in the States already?
It was a really interesting moment because like you said, I worked only in restaurants in Australia and Europe and then started dabbling in a little television. And then I came to America to do a show. I came to do that show with Jet, me and Jet on Take Home Chef. And I was meant to be here for a couple of months and I ended up doing 140 episodes of that show. And it obviously just kept me very busy. And at some point I was like, I'll get to opening a restaurant. I'll get to opening a restaurant. But, you know, it was sort of one thing kept leading to the next. And it kind of kept me away from it. And I remember it really clearly. I had my 1-year-old at the time, Hudson is now nearly 10. We were in a park together and it was a show. I can't remember exactly what it was that I was doing, but I read something. I was in the park looking at my phone and I read something, and it was about me not necessarily having the chops as a chef. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, I've worked in the best restaurants in the world. This person clearly doesn't know what they're talking about. And it made me really quite angry. And I thought, that's it. I'm doing it, because I was looking at my son playing and I thought, I never want this young man to think that I got lucky. I want him to know what hard work's about. I want to be a dad that leads by example. And I went on this like little mental mission, and that was it for me. That sealed the deal. I was then going to open my first restaurant. And then, of course, I opened Maud in Beverly Hills, and it's a tiny little place. And, of course, that kind of restaurant usually has a following with people that love gastronomy, people that are prepared to spend a couple of $100 on a 3-hour experience, a tasting menu. It's people that are real foodies. You know, I mean, goodness, we have some guests that will fly in to come for dinner, and I know that they're getting back on their jet and flying somewhere else to go for another incredible meal. And so it's very specific. So the interesting thing about mixing television with those kind of restaurants is people come, but they're not necessarily those gastronomes that are really into food. You know, people that are willing to put yourself in their hands and in your hands and say, I'll eat a 10-course meal, and I don't care if you serve me rabbits or snails or truffles or whatever it is. They're very open to it. So, you know, when you find someone that watches a TV show, it could be absolutely anyone. Like Jet said, it reaches such a broad audience. And it is undeniable. It does bring people into your restaurants. In a really high-end fine dining environment, you're like, goodness, do they know what they're in for? You know, do they realize the cost? Do they, you know, the wine list starts at $70 and goes to $5,000 or $10,000, you know, so it does create a few issues. But Antonia is so right. If you will get people to come in because they've seen you on television, but there's no way on God's green earth they come back unless you're really good, you know, and you've got to prove it. And in some ways, I feel like the bar is set even slightly higher because people do come in with an expectation that this is going to be the best meal I've ever eaten. And if it's not, then you're in trouble, you know. So, you know, we're very fortunate as people with a profile or a platform to be able to bring people to our businesses. It's because I know wonderful chefs, great people that have worked super hard and have crazy talent. And just to have them found is very difficult. And you find yourself telling everyone about it. You've got to go, you've got to check it out because you become their advocates. And I think we're very, very fortunate and lucky to have that. But it doesn't mean you can relax or take it easy. You've still got to prove yourself you know, I think in television, they say you're only as good as your last episode. In the restaurant world, we say you're only as good as the last meal you serve. It's very, very true.
It is. Well, these days, serving a meal looks very different. It goes without saying, but I will say it anyway. The restaurant industry has been impacted in an unprecedented way in the last year. It has been nothing short of catastrophic. But there is hope and there is light and a little relief on the way. That said, the last 13, 14 months have seen some extraordinary creativity, innovation, and compassion in the restaurant industry. And I want to talk a little bit about, dare I say, the pivot and the things that the three of you specifically have done to keep your restaurant teams afloat. I mean, and your television careers, because obviously that has also taken a huge hit in a way that none of us could have ever imagined. Jet, what are some of the things that you and your team at the restaurants have done to keep each other safe and to serve your customers?
You know, through, you know, no genius stroke of mine, you know, I wanted to spend the last 5 years of my career focused in fast casual. And I think, you know, and that was not through smarts, that was through really the necessity to want to be home with my children and spend time with my wife, because I've spent my entire career away from them. So the pandemic was a very different experience for myself. So like everybody, we shut it all down. I mean, hundreds of restaurants across the country. And then through the first 8 weeks, depending on the states we were in, you know, our pivot, we were already kind of tailored to takeout, and we're tailored to quicker service. But we did an immediate kind of pivot in investment in technology and really kind of figuring out how to get meals served quicker, more portably, and how to interface with that client. So for us, it was technology, and it was also use of social media for messaging. And it was also through the platform that I created through television, being able to have direct conversations. So really cutting out a lot of those middlemen, sometimes last mile operators. And that was a big help. And in terms of television itself, you know, for those of you that are watching now, you know, before we were kind of getting this tech check, you know, I've become, when the cameras aren't rolling when we're on set, I'm the guy hanging out with the lighting guys, the sound guys, and the DP. And so all of those hundreds of hours understanding lighting and cameras, and you know, we actually brought some of that knowledge into the house because we were stuck. You know, we upgraded, you know, equipment. We invested tons of money in equipment, and that really kind of helped us produce our own content for, you know, sometimes big national players. So we're shooting commercials out of the house, we're shooting digital content and cooking through pandemic socially really kind of saved my, in terms of mental health, saved me, because I was stuck. We were all stuck at home, but through social media and because of the audience I've cultivated through television, I was actually interacting with fans, doing lives and hanging out, and so there's just this huge power of community that I think that television creates. So those are some of the ways that me and my team pivoted.
And do you think that for the restaurants specifically, some of this will stick around?
Yeah, I do. I feel
beyond this moment.
Yeah, I think, and again, I'm dying to hear Curtis's and Antonio's take, because again, I think I'm mostly in quick service, but the changes that
That's what makes you all interesting while you're here. I mean,
right.
That's what's valuable.
I think it'll stick around, Gail. I think that we're going to still see. It's going to be a while until this shift of I think takeout to dine in is going to equalize, in my opinion, especially in our locations. And I think we have trained people in this really very short curve to get into technology faster. So where we were talking about, mixed menu mixes of to go versus dine in, and which tech platforms equated to orders, I think a lot of the landscape has changed permanently.
Yeah. Curtis, you were speaking a few minutes ago about 10-course tasting menus and your 24-seat restaurant at Mod. And I know you also have Gwen, which is a very different format, obviously. But it's been a long time since I've sat in a restaurant and had a 10-course tasting menu, but I know you've done something very interesting at Mod. Will you tell us about it?
Well, look, first of all, we had never put any food into a box. We'd never sold anything on an app. We were the last, and we also didn't have an outdoor area in either of our LA restaurants. And it was just like this shock of like, well, what are we going to do? My brother's my business partner, and I said, we've got to take care of the team. So let's just flip them into markets and start selling produce and we'll make lasagna and chicken pot pies and we'll just sell something. So we did. And, just so you understand the economics of a restaurant, a restaurant might turn over somewhere between 50 and 75,000 bucks a week, but the profit margin is tiny. A lot of restaurants break even or get very close to that break even point. So as soon as that revenue stops, your expenses don't go away. So it means that you can quickly be losing between 50 and 75 grand a week. And, I don't know any restaurateurs that aren't big corporations that just have pockets that deep, and I told my brother, don't worry, we're going to turn them into markets and it's all going to be okay. And we did. And he called me 2 weeks later and said, all right, well, we lost 30 grand here and we lost 20 grand. And you're just like, oh my God, what are we going to do? So we closed them. And 2 days later, I got a text messages from one of the people that we had to let go. And she was a glass polisher, right? Because you can imagine you serve 10 courses, 10 wines. You need someone back there polishing glasses all night long. And she texted me and said, and I'll never forget reading this text message, but she said, I'm a single mum. I have no other way of taking care of my family. And I just need your help. And I get emotional thinking about it. It moved me in a way that I was like, it's not even about us. It's not about our businesses. It's about our team. So we have to figure it out. And we opened a pop-up at the Grove around picnics. We opened a pop-up at Maud, which is now Pie Shop. And, never in a million years would have I said, I know what I'll do. I'll open a pie shop. A pie is, but when you actually stop and think about it,
Let's just clarify the pie, Curtis, because most people are thinking you're making like strawberry rhubarb pies. Just clarify the pie from an Aussie.
Yeah, well, we are making a strawberry and rhubarb pie, actually. We're doing sweet pies.
And I bet it's delicious. They're good,
but the real idea of it was Aussie and British savory pies. So we do, rabbit, chicken, beef, goat, lamb, curry, you name it. We make a variety of different braises and stews and slow cooks, and then we turn them into pies. And of course, having a butcher shop, we're very fortunate because we have incredible access to suet and leaf lard and these wonderful fats that we use as they did at the turn of the century in pies in the UK, where you'd make a pie from beef fat or pork, depending, of course, of the filling. So you get this lovely flavor in the pastry. So yeah, we went on this journey of making pies, and look, we've been super successful. We're back to re-employing, or at least being able to offer back nearly everyone their jobs through the worst parts of the pandemic. And now, of course, that things are opening up, we're actually sitting there scratching our heads saying, God, when's the right time? Because we don't want to, we've built this real following for the pies, and it'll be a little difficult to just turn our back on it. So, but they're good problems. The harder problems were back when we're saying, what on earth are we going to do? But look, I think it's been very, very challenging for everyone in our business. It just has. And we appreciate everyone's support. We've had lots of locals and old customers in the restaurants that have continued to support us as markets and pie shops and God knows what, and bought our food on delivery, and even when we've gotten the boxes wrong. But we've managed to figure that out along the journey, like I think so many of us have.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And Antonia, tell us where the state of your restaurants right now, and what has been the biggest kind of change to them in the last year. I mean, everything has changed, I know, but what you have done to keep it afloat.
I mean, when I hear the word pivot, I get triggered, because it's like the word of 2020.
We all do.
Like,
I wish. I'm
we
sorry.
Hear that word.
I know.
If we hear pivot, I was like, God, that word. We just got to take it out of the English dictionary. My experience is very similar to Curtis, and what he said about the margins in restaurants. Like, you can see yourself in debt within a couple of weeks because our margin of profit is so low. Your first instinct is obviously like, cut as much as you can, keep it as small as you possibly can. But it really did come down to staff. It came down to people who can't afford to live in Los Angeles, one of the most expensive, counties in all of the country, and live off of unemployment. It just wasn't a possibility. And we turned everything we had everything within 48 hours into markets. We were selling every produce that you could possibly imagine, flour, salt, sugar, because basically the country ran out of flour in the month of April, because there was more flour sold in the months of April and May than it doubled than what they normally sell in the world in the biggest baking months of our country, which is usually November and December, because everyone was home making bagels and sourdough and challah bread, and we've all seen the TikTok videos. So we were selling everything that anyone needed. At that point, Scopa, which is an American Italian restaurant, I was doing Passover dinners. I was doing literally anything, any holiday that was coming up. We were doing barbecue boxes. I was doing, and people wanted to support the restaurant. I mean, everybody in the community, and make no mistake, a huge thank you to every person, in this country who has supported restaurants during this time. Restaurants are open, it's because of your support. End of story. So that's a really big deal. And we had people who were like, tell us how we can help. And so for us, it became about figuring out these interesting and fun little, boxes that we could do for people on a weekend, for a holiday, whatever it was, that made them feel like something special was happening because everyone was at home. During the last shutdown, I was just telling Curtis this before we started a national shipping delivery service where you could do it yourself at home, rice balls and empanada kits and fluffernutter kits and things that were now being purchased all over the country. And so this last shutdown that we had in November, I actually didn't have to lay anybody off from Scopa, because that business did so well. And there was so much support from the entire country buying rice balls in Detroit, that it kept all of my staff, all of my back of the house staff employed all through the holidays. So that was a really, really big deal. And that is just a huge thank you to all the communities. And then, Zoom dinners and different companies that wanted to still have holiday events, instead of them doing them in the restaurant where we would have sometimes buyouts of 40 people up in the PDR, they started doing them at home, and we offered these meals to have them pick up. And then I would be on Zoom and we would all cook together. So I was just trying to figure out different ways to create revenue sources through the venue. And we're okay. Everything's open now, but I mean, I didn't think Dama was going to reopen. Like, I thought we were going to lose Dama for sure. And so we don't know. I mean, right now, we're in Los Angeles and we're still not open. And so we're still not open, to the extent that we need to be open. We don't have bar business. We don't have a lot of the things that we actually still really need to survive. So we're still in the middle of it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, you have all done an extraordinary job over the last year, and it is remarkable to see how your community has come together and what you were able to accomplish in what I can only say was the most dire circumstance. Last thing before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you, and I want just from each of you 2 words. I'm going to say that again. Which television chef do you most admire? Curtis?
My God, it's so hard. That's already more than 2 words. There's so many that have had such an impact on me. But I think, my late friend Tony Bourdain was such a inspiration to so many of us, and he just spoke his mind, and he was the real deal. He just he uncovered a lot of things and gave us an opportunity to be ourselves and think. So yeah, that was way more than 2 words.
That's fine. I liked it. I approve. Jet, what about you?
Since Curtis broke the rules, I'm going to have to as well. If I just may give 3 names that personally lifted me up in my career. First, it was Alton Brown, and then it was Bobby Flay, and then it was Guy Fieri, who personally took me under their wings in different phases. And currently today, without these 3 individuals, I wouldn't be anywhere close to where I am today. I broke the rules. Sorry.
We're chefs.
You're
We're
forgiven.
all rule breakers. We don't follow the rules. What is?
Yeah, I know. Sorry, shouldn't have even asked. Shouldn't have even put the parameters on it. Antonia, what about you?
In the cooking world, I'm going to say first and foremost Julia Childs, because for me, she changed the way American housewives cooked. It's as simple as that. She brought over at a time where there was, there were not people cooking on television or explaining it, and she really changed the dynamic about the way Americans, the American household looked at food, and I thought that was really incredible. But I have to agree with Jet, our kind of trajectory when it comes to chefs that we look up to. I would also have to say Tom Colicchio, because he was my first chef judge who scared the living daylights out of me, but in the same time gave me some of the most incredible feedback of my life.
I love that. Thank you. Yes, Tom is all bark, no bite.
I'm gonna have to humbly disagree.
Oh, fine, fair. Thank you guys so much for talking with me, for taking time out of your lives and away from your families and your businesses to share this insight with me and with the Television Academy audience. Thank you again to the Television Academy for letting us have this amazing conversation. I really appreciate being able to be part of it. Stay safe out there, guys, and have a great night.
Thank you, Gail.
See you later.
Bye, Gail.
Thanks, Gail.